Invasion of the Black Slime and Other Tales of Horror by R.G. Austin. For 10 wonderful days, you have been traveling across the country on your bicycle. Now you are biking to an old mining town called Silverlode. The scenery is magnificent. You pass by rocky bluffs, occasionally stopping to explore caves and climb to the tops of mountains. Pine forests are abundant, and the air is crisp and clean. It is the best vacation you have ever had. As you pedal along a winding road to the top of the highest mountain, you grow weary. Your legs are weak, and the thin air of the high altitude makes it difficult for you to catch your breath. Just as you reach the top, you see a boy resting next to his bike at the side of the road. You stop and climb off your bike, delighted to see another person. After you introduce yourselves, you ask him where he is going. "Anywhere but Silverlode," Chris answers. "What do you mean? That's where I'm heading," you say. "I intend to spend a few days there." "I wouldn't if I were you," Chris answers ominously. "The town has been invaded." "Invaded, you ask?" 3 days ago, he explains, I was exploring an old mine shaft about a mile from town. Something happened while I was deep inside. The people told me it was a huge sun flare, but I suspect it was more, for the blinding light was accompanied by an earth-shaking tremor that lasted 2 minutes. I saw and felt nothing because I was protected by the shaft, but weird things began to happen. It all started with the terrible black slime that began to bubble into town. "Where did it come from?" you ask, fascinated. Nobody knows, but the night after it appeared, the animals howled until dawn. Then people began to behave in strange ways, making hissing noises and attacking each other. Yesterday, 2 people were murdered, but no one seemed to care. When I got upset, everyone thought I was crazy. It is as though their minds have been clouded. I was frightened by their behavior, so I decided to leave while I still could. "But where will you go?" you ask. "In the next valley, there is a house that belonged to my uncle, Harry Crispin. It is the only place I can go." "Is your uncle a nice man?" you ask. "Oh, he's been dead for 10 years. He was very rich, and he owned this crazy house. They say that weird things go on inside that empty house. Uncle Harry left a will that stipulated that the first person who could spend 24 hours there would inherit $1 million. "Wow!" "Not so fast," the boy replies. 5 people have gone into the house, but no one has ever come out." "Is your uncle's house in a town?" you ask. "No, the nearest house is more than a mile away. It belongs to a doctor. They say that he's crazy. Years ago, his only son was killed in a car accident. Shortly after that, he moved from Silverlode to this isolated house. No one has seen him since. He's probably just a lonely old man living out his life in solitude." Chris sits quietly for a moment and then asks suddenly, "Would you like to come with me to my uncle's house? If we make it, we can split the $1 million. If you suspect that Chris is exaggerating about the black slime and want to continue on your trip as you had originally planned, turn to page 7. If haunted houses and black slime do not appeal to you, and you would rather meet the doctor, turn to page 9. If you like the idea of trying to get $500,000 in just one day, go with the boy to his Uncle Harry's house on page 77. Page 7. You thank Chris for his invitation, but tell him that you wish to continue your journey as you had originally planned. Then you climb on your bicycle and head toward Silverlode. When you reach the town, everything seems perfectly normal. Maybe Chris has an overactive imagination, you think. There's nothing wrong here. You are hungry, and it is almost lunchtime, so you ride over to the local diner and order a hamburger and a milkshake. As you eat, you look around the diner. People are talking happily in their booths and at the counter. They are eating French fries, drinking sodas, munching hamburgers. There is only one thing that seems a little strange. Everyone is wearing dark glasses. You cannot see any eyes. A fad, you think. Sunglasses are in Silverlode. 8. After lunch, you check into your hotel room. You have been sleeping in sleeping bags on the hard ground for the past 2 weeks, and the bed looks so inviting that you lie down for a nap. You are so exhausted that you sleep for the rest of the day. When you waken, it is late afternoon. You lie in bed, thinking about what you should do that evening. If you decide to look around town, turn to page 12. If you would rather go to the movies, turn to page 20. Let's go to the movies, page 20. The theater is small and old-fashioned, and you are pleased that it is showing one of your favorite old-time musicals. The previews have just begun when you arrive. You buy a bag of popcorn and take a seat in the back of the theater. You are thoroughly enjoying the movie when, in the middle of a terrific dance routine, the projector breaks and the film stops. The theater is pitch black and silent. In a matter of seconds, a low and hostile hiss fills the theater. The hiss grows louder and louder until your head is spinning with the growing intensity of the reptilian-like noise. You wait eagerly for the lights to go on, but instead, an eerie yellow glow fills the theater. You look around and discover that you are surrounded by angry, hissing people with yellow eyes that shine in the dark. You get up from your seat and squeeze past a row of hissing people. Then you start to run. You race back to the hotel and up the 2 flights of stairs to your room. When you are inside, you bolt the door and lie down on your bed, totally exhausted from the bizarre and frightening experience. As you lie on your bed feeling safe at last, you smell something strange. You look around and discover a trickle of black goo oozing from one of the cracks in the wall. If you think it is better to leave the stuff alone, turn to page 38. If you think you should clean the slime off the wall, turn to page 45. I think we're going to leave that stuff alone. 38. You decide to ignore the black slime, hoping that it will dry up. You distract yourself by reading a book. An hour later, when you finally look up again, you are horrified to see that the black slime has oozed into the room, creating jagged black veins up and down the walls. Soon, the gelatinous slime is pouring onto the floor like thousands of tiny black waterfalls. You climb onto the bed, pull your legs up close to your body, and watch in terror as the black slime pours through the cracks and covers the floor. Then the light fixture in the ceiling begins to move back and forth, and the slime squeezes its way through the hole in the ceiling and drips down onto the bed. There is a terrible stench in the room that reminds you of garlic and ether. You feel sick and dizzy. Page 39. Before your eyes, the rivers of black slime flow together until they have formed a giant blob in the middle of the floor. Then the blob begins to sway and move as if it is suddenly a living thing. It pulsates and beats like a giant heart, faster and faster. Then it emits a low hum. As the blob beats faster, the hum grows louder, faster and faster, louder and louder. You are going mad with the noise, crazed by the incessantly quivering blob. Then suddenly, it explodes. 40. Millions of tiny black fragments float through the room and fill the air with a nauseating smell. Then you notice the tiny objects are not floating, they are flying. The room is filled with millions of gnat-like insects. They are swarming around your head. If you try to escape from the room, turn to page 47. If you scream at the top of your lungs, turn to page 53. I think it's probably time to get out of here. Page 47. 47. You grab the pillow on your bed and take off the case. Then you slip it over your head for protection. Even though you cannot see, you know you can feel your way to the door. You cannot see the insects now, but you can feel them swarming around you. They land on your arms and crawl up your shirt sleeves. You can feel them beginning to make their way up the legs of your jeans. They are menacing you, attacking you, trying to prevent you from leaving. You raise your hands and press the pillowcase tightly around your neck. The thought of the little black bugs crawling onto your face, invading your nose and ears and mouth makes you want to vomit. You are already gagging from the smell. Page 48. But you feel dizzy and cannot orient yourself to the room. You forget where the wall is, where the bed is. You are tempted to pull up the pillowcase for just a moment to get your bearings. You are not certain what direction to take to find the door. 49. No, you think, they will attack me if I expose my face. So you put your hand out in front of you and take a step. You feel nothing. Then you take another step. Nothing. On the third step, you feel the wall. Now move to the right, you tell yourself. That is the direction of the door. You move slowly, carefully. Your shoes stick to the slime as you walk, and you are suddenly afraid that the slime will move up your legs. But you keep on walking, the insects buzzing and bumping you as you go. Finally, you feel the door frame, and then the doorknob. As you turn it, the insects grow angry, as if they are trying to prevent your escape. But you are not deterred. You open the door and step out into the hall, swinging your arms wildly. The angry buzz of the insects grows louder as you hit them. You know that you must be able to see in order to make your way down the steps. You take a deep breath, rip the case from your head, and start to run. Page 50. The insects start after you, but you take the pillowcase and wave it in front of you, clearing a path. You reach the end of the hall and start down the stairs 2 at a time. There are not so many insects now. They have flown off in different directions. You make it down the first flight, the second flight. Then you run across the lobby and push your way through the revolving door. You look back and see hundreds of tiny insects trapped in one of the revolving door compartments. Out on the street, people are wandering around in aimless circles. They are clearly looking for someone or something. The glow of their yellow eyes casts an ominous light on the square. Suddenly, someone taps you on the shoulder. "Come with me," says a woman's voice. If you go with the woman, turn to page 58. If you refuse to go, turn to page 61. I think we're going to try and listen to her. Page 58. You turn to look at the woman who is speaking. To your relief, you see that her eyes are blue. "Before we do anything," the woman says, "put this on." She hands you a gauze surgical mask, and you tie it behind your head so that it covers your nostrils and mouth. "That is how they get inside you," the woman explains, "through your nose and mouth." "The insects, you ask?" "Yes," she answers, "the insects born of the slime." Then she adds, "Come, we can talk later. We must hurry, or they will come after us." You follow the woman as she leads you away from the town square. You go down alleys and streets, and always she looks behind to see if you are being followed. Finally, she stops at a gate set into a high brick wall. The woman knocks 3 times. The gate is opened by a child. Page 59. You cross a courtyard and move quickly inside the house. There is a group of people waiting. "Good work, Felice. One more rescue." Every one of the people in the room has clear eyes. "How many of you are there?" you ask. "There used to be over 300. Now we only have 80 left," Felice says sadly. "The yellow-eyed people are a formidable enemy." "Have they taken over the entire town?" you ask. "Everything and everyone. I don't know how much longer we can survive if we do not discover why this is happening." "Why don't you just leave?" you ask, "or call in the government?" "Because these people are our friends and relatives. We are afraid that if we notify the authorities, they will do something terrible to our people. Besides, the telephone lines have been cut, and CB radios don't work in such high mountains. So we are trying to solve the problem ourselves." Turn to page 60. What progress have you made, you ask? We know that the only people not affected by the blast are those who were in basements or other very protected places at the time of the sun flare. We also know that the insects are after those of us who were unaffected by the flare. The insects come from the slime, and the slime comes from somewhere in the forest. Where, you ask? None of us wants to risk traveling into the forest to find out, Felice says, so we have been working on a solution in our basement laboratory. If you feel that the only way to solve the slime problem is to go into the forest, turn to page 65. If you would rather seek a scientific solution in the basement, turn to page 68. Let's try the forest on page 65. You tell the people who are still untouched that you will go into the forest to search for the origin of the slime. They inform you that every evening at dusk, the insects appear in town, and every morning at sunrise, they fly back to the forest. You spend a tense night in the safe house, and then, just before sunrise, you get up and leave the house. You walk briskly to the edge of town and wait in an old shack, just as Felice had instructed you to do. Soon, you hear a faint hissing noise. It grows louder and louder until the source of the sound is directly overhead. Only after it passes do you venture out of the shack. 66. About 50 yards ahead of you, a massive dark cloud is swirling in the air, moving in circular patterns towards the trees beyond. There must be billions of insects in that mass, you think. You follow the insects into the trees. Soon you find yourself running to keep up with them as they go deeper and deeper into the woods. You are exhausted when finally the insect cloud begins to fly higher. It travels in a spiral pattern until it reaches some unknown limit. Then it begins to dive directly down. Page 67. With incredible speed, the entire swarm dives and disappears into the trees. You wait a few minutes to see if the insects reappear. Crawl on your belly as you grow close, terrified that you may be seen. Finally, you take cover behind a bush and peer through the branches. There, before you, is a metallic saucer-shaped disc. The source of the power, you think. If you decide that the smartest thing to do is run back to town and tell Felice and her friends about the saucer, turn to page 69. If you stay and observe the saucer, turn to page 75. Let's turn to 69. You turn to run, and then you see, 5 feet in front of you, a wall of black slime coming straight at you. You know that you only have seconds to get out of the way. If you climb the tree next to you, turn to page 101. If you run in the other direction, turn to page 114. Let's climb the tree. 101. You climb the tree. The slime surrounds the trunk, and you know that any moment the black pulsating blob will start to move up the tree. As you crouch in the crook of the trunk, you know that you have no choice. Turn to page 104. Slowly and carefully, you make your way to the longest branch. Below, the slime is moving relentlessly towards you. You inch carefully out along the branch. It bends under your weight, and you are panicked at the thought that the branch might break and drop you into the inky mass. You crouch, ready to jump. When most of the slime is on the tree, you spring forward and catch a hold of a thin branch beneath you. You swing back and forth, gaining momentum with every back and forth move. Then you let go, sailing over the noxious slime. You land with a thud and run for your life. When you glance back at the slime, you discover that it is no longer chasing you. It has returned to protect the spacecraft. You return to the safe house and tell the untouched survivors what you have discovered, and then together you devise a plan. If you decide to fly a helicopter to the site of the alien craft and drop dynamite onto it, turn to page 117. If you want to attack the slime rather than the craft, turn to page 118. Let's try to attack the slime. 118. You tell the group that you think the slime is the main source of the problem and that you must devise a way to destroy it. The others are very skeptical about this, but when you ask them to come up with a better solution, nobody has one, so you proceed with your plan. One of the untouched survivors owns a hardware store for industrial supplies, so you are able to procure small barrels of turpentine, which is a strong solvent. To protect your eyes from the sun, you put on a hat. Then 25 of you enter the woods, each shouldering a barrel. As you approach the spaceship, the black slime slithers towards you. Quickly, your group surrounds the slime as it begins to stretch out in all directions, bent on destroying you. "Don't throw the turpentine until I tell you," you call out to the group. The slime moves closer. The smell of ether and garlic fills the air. When the slime is only 5 feet away, you yell, "Now!" Turn to 115. All together, you pull the stoppers from the barrels and pour turpentine on the slime. You watch, horrified, as the slime begins to bubble furiously. A low, enraged rumbling fills the air as the black mass squirms and wiggles. You almost feel sorry for it as it struggles in its death throes. 116. Finally, the slime begins to break up. As it disintegrates, a furious hissing noise fills the air, and a swarm of insects flies out of the ship. You are certain that they are after you. But as the slime disappears, the humming noise grows lower and lower, and soon, billions of insects fall dead to the ground. Just as I hoped, you think. The slime provided nourishment and intelligence for the insects. They cannot live without it. When silence finally descends on the woods, the group gathers together near the spaceship. "What now?" Felice asks. "We must explore the ship," says a man. "Who dares go inside?" If you volunteer to explore the ship, turn to page 102. If you are not interested in taking any more risks, turn to page 113. Let's go check out that ship. Although you are taking a great risk, your curiosity forces you to volunteer for the job. You climb carefully up the metal ramp that extends from a hatch in the side of the ship. When you are at the top, you take a deep breath and step inside, and there you are confronted with a wondrous sight. A splendid golden glow illuminates each part of the ship, bathing everything in a gentle light. The source of this light is a tiny pebble about the size of a raisin. As you watch, the pebble begins to pulsate, shining its brilliance onto every part of the ship. Above the pebble is a map of the universe, and you realize that this ship has come from outside your galaxy. You consider the possibility that this is not a hostile ship, that on this unknown planet trillions of light years away, the black slime may have been considered harmless. You are sorry that it was necessary to destroy the slime, and you wish that there was a way to communicate with the unknown creatures who sent the space probe. 103. Suddenly, the ship begins to shake. Something strange is happening, and you know that you must get off immediately. I wonder if it's going home, you think, wishing that you could send them a message. As you rush out of the ship, you toss the hat you are wearing into the interior. At least they'll know someone was in there, you think. When you reach the edge of the clearing, a strange glow envelops the ship. Before your eyes, the saucer grows brighter and brighter until it finally disappears in its own light. Only then do you realize that the message you have sent to another galaxy was a strange one indeed. Painted on the front of your hat was a picture of E.T. The end.